Have you ever just stopped to think about your workout habits? Like the things you do every single time you hit the gym, the track, or the field? Is it possible that your deeply ingrained pre-workout routine, like touching your toes for 30 seconds before a run, is actually sabotaging your athletic goals?
Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here with us. Today, we're taking a fascinating look at the athlete's journey, but we're focusing entirely on science over superstition. We're going to build a chronological breakdown of an athlete's workout, from the literal moment you tie your shoes to the second you hit the showers. And to do this, we're using only the latest, most rigorous research from sports medicine, psychology, and physiology. So here's how we're breaking it all down today. First up, pre-game, body and mind. Second, the heat of the action. Third, post-game, the cool-down myth. And finally, building your ultimate routine. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, pre-game, body and mind.
Let's play a little game of expectation versus science. For decades, the expectation was that holding a static stretch, like a seated hamstring stretch, for 30 seconds prevents injury. Well, science tells a totally different story. Prolonged static stretching right before exercise actually temporarily reduces your muscle strength and power. Yeah, you heard that right. And it's totally unlinked to pre-run injury reduction. Instead, look at the medically backed alternative, dynamic stretching. Moving your muscles through a full range of motion, like doing leg swings or high knees, actually increases blood flow, activates your muscles, improves running economy, and directly reduces your risk of muscle strain. It's a total game changer.
Now, if we're talking about youth athletes, we really have to look at the center of the body. Kids' bodies are under this constant stress from growing and developing, right? So before they even attempt those dynamic mobility exercises, they need to activate what's called pillar stability. This pillar region consists of the torso, the spine, the hips, and the shoulders. And it is absolutely crucial. Why? Because this region is exactly where all kinetic energy originates and transfers to the rest of the body. If that pillar isn't ready, energy leaks, performance drops, and man, the injury risk skyrockets.
But hey, the pregame isn't just physical. Tuning your mental engine is just as important. Take a look at this concept called the inverted U theory. It's a psychological principle stating that arousal, which basically means your physical and mental alertness, facilitates performance, but only up to an optimal level. If you get too amped up and push beyond that peak, your performance actually starts to decline. So you don't just want max energy, you want optimal energy. What's really fascinating here is how that optimal level shifts depending on your sport. Simple or really well-learned tasks like basic distance running, they actually benefit from high arousal because that physiological excitement strengthens your dominant automatic response. But complex, decision-heavy tasks, picture a soccer goalie having to read a penalty shot, require relatively low arousal. High arousal literally narrows your attentional focus. So if you're that goalie and you're way too hyped up, your brain is going to miss the subtle physical cues of the player taking the shot. And you absolutely have to manage this because of something called catastrophe theory. This warns us that if you combine excessive arousal with high cognitive anxiety, which is really just a fancy term for worry, your performance doesn't just dip on a nice smooth curve. No, it falls right off a cliff. It drops suddenly and dramatically. And when this happens, an athlete can't just push through it. They need deliberate down-regulation strategies, like diaphragmatic breathing, to completely reset their nervous system.
All right, moving right along to section 2, the heat of the action.
Okay, I want you to let this massive number sink in for a second. 3.7 liters. That is the exact amount of sweat Alberto Salazar lost per hour during the 1984 Olympic marathon. 3.7 liters in a single hour. That is wild. It's an incredible, surprising fact that perfectly illustrates just how heavily human beings rely on evaporative heat loss, sweating, to survive and maintain our core temp when we're working at maximum capacity. And this brilliantly illustrates the physiological cascade that happens when we exercise in the heat. Let's walk through it together. First, thermoreceptors tell your brain, hey, we're getting too hot. Second, to cool you down, your body diverts blood away from your deep core tissues and out into your compliant skin veins. Third, because that blood is now pooling in your skin to release heat, your central blood volume drops. Your heart literally has less blood to pump with each beat. So step 4, your heart rate has to spike dramatically just to maintain the same cardiac output. It is an immense circulatory strain on the body. Just look at what happens when you move from a temperate 20 degrees Celsius environment to a hot 49-degree environment. In the heat, your reliance on anaerobic metabolism goes way up. Your maximal oxygen uptake, or VO2 max, the max amount of oxygen your body can effectively use, actually drops by about 1/4 of a liter per minute. And your plasma lactate levels, they get elevated.
Why? Because blood is being diverted away from internal organs like your liver, which normally clears that lactate just so it can go cool your skin. Exercising in the heat fundamentally changes how your body feels itself.
Let's slow it down a bit as we transition into Section 3, post-game, the cool-down myth. Take a look at this incredibly stark quote derived from the research in Scientific Triathlon. There is nothing to support that cooldowns are recovery enhancers in any way, shape, or form. Seriously, think about that. For years, we've been told that a cool-down jog magically clears lactic acid and stops you from being sore the next day. But the science, it simply does not support this. So, here is the crucial point. Delayed onset muscle soreness is caused by mechanical micro tears in your muscle fibers. It's a structural stress that allows your muscles to rebuild stronger. It is absolutely 100% not caused by lactic acid buildup. In fact, studies show lactic acid is completely dissipated within an hour anyway, and your body actually converts it back into glycogen to use as fuel. So, if a cool down doesn't cure muscle soreness, why on earth do we do it? Well, here are the actual science-backed reasons. The primary benefit is preventing postural hypotension. That's that dangerous dizziness or fainting you see when a runner crosses a finish line and just stops completely dead. A cool down keeps the muscles pumping, which stops blood from suddenly pooling in your legs, allowing your circulatory system to safely and slowly return to its resting state. It also has a potential training effect, teaching your brain to recruit new muscle fibers when you're already fatigued.
Now, remember how we completely threw static stretching out the window at the beginning of the workout? Well, plot twist. It makes its rightful return right here. After your active cool-down walk, your muscles are deeply warmed up. This is the scientifically appropriate time to hold those fixed stretches for 15 to 60 seconds. Doing it post-workout helps maintain flexibility and relieve tightness safely.
Which brings us to Section 4, building your ultimate routine. Let's put all the signs together. Here is your chronological journey. At T-minus 15 minutes, you're doing dynamic stretching to increase blood flow while actively managing your mental arousal, getting amped up for simple tasks or staying calm for complex ones. From minute 0 to 60, you are in the crucible. You're executing the exercise, knowing that if it's hot, your VO2 max will drop and your heart rate will spike, meaning you absolutely must hydrate to replace those liters of sweat. And finally, at minute 60 and beyond, you do a low-intensity cool-down walk to prevent blood pooling and fainting, followed finally by static stretching to lock in that flexibility. It's a holistic approach that safely guides you from preparation, through execution, and into recovery. Which leaves us with one final thought. Tomorrow, will you just train hard, or will you train smart? Applying the science we've explored in this explainer isn't just about shaving a few seconds off a stopwatch. It is the absolute key to your athletic longevity. Thanks so much for exploring the data with me today.